There are literally hundreds of former players who played under Coach Bryant who are attending today's services, and I know it'll be virtually impossible for those players to get together and reminisce and talk about the great man, Paul Bear Bryant. And there will be a reception in Birmingham for all former Alabama football players. It'll be hosted by the First and 10 Club from 1:30 to 4 o'clock at the Birmingham Hyatt House following today's services at the Elmwood Cemetery. We understand now that the services are over. The bells have begun to ring here in Tuscaloosa. The pallbearers have made their way out of the church. Looking across the way, we see Gerald Sprinkle on the right-hand side, the defensive back. The services have just concluded.
And just according to Mrs. Bryant's wishes, it has been brief. And as we mentioned earlier, in the First Methodist Church here, only about 450 people can be seated in there. And perhaps as many as 600 in the Baptist Church across the way for the dignitaries, and an equal number in the Presbyterian Church just one half block down the street.
The Reverend Joe Elmore now exiting the church along with Dr. Duncan Hunter, the two men who delivered this morning's eulogy. And as you can hear in the background, I'm sure, the bells are ringing out here in Tuscaloosa. First out of the church is Coach Bryant's successor, Ray Perkins, and his wife, Carolyn. Coach Perkins, other than Coach Bryant's immediate family, was the last person to see Coach Bryant alive. He visited with him at about 8:30 Wednesday morning. I saw him leaving the hospital, and I asked him how Coach Bryant was feeling. He said, he's feeling great. I'm off recruiting. And, of course, Coach Perkins learned of Coach Bryant's death while he was on a trip in Virginia recruiting a high school athlete. Now many of the 1982 football team is filing out of the church. Coach Bryant's coaching staff. There are many of Coach Bryant's former players now coming out of the First Baptist Church across the way. The procession route will begin very shortly to Birmingham. The procession here through Tuscaloosa will be estimated at about 5 miles.
In that crowd, you will find some of his favorites. I say that because Coach Bryant always said that he would not treat everybody alike, but he would treat them fairly. But he, down through the years, did have some favorites whom he heaped great praise on. One of the survivors of Junction in Texas A&M was Beebe Stallings, and he is here.
Coach Bryant's friend, but also adversary, Pat Dye at Auburn University. In the picture now, Jim Goosetree, for so many years, the head trainer here at the University of Alabama and a very dear friend of Coach Bryant.
There's some of the irony of football there for you, Herb. Jim Goosetree and Ken Donahue, both graduates of the University of Tennessee, which in Coach Bryant's playing days was the severest of rivals. It would be safe to say that there's 60 years of the University of Alabama football represented here in one way or another. Players, coaches, and fans.
A lot of these people who are gathered here on the street, as we see the Baptist church across the way, but a lot of these people who are gathered here, Tom, they've never even met Coach Paul Bear Bryant. They have only lived through Coach Bryant, through his legend. But yet, as we had said so many times in this broadcast, that Coach Bryant had a way of touching all of us, whether you came in contact with him or not. And now you see Richard Todd, the New York Jets quarterback.
And more of the 1982 University of Alabama football team still coming out. I did talk with another one this morning who has got to be considered one of the greats of all time that Coach Bryant coached. He had one Heisman Trophy winner, but Leroy Jordan was closest to the hearts, I guess, of most people of the state of Alabama. When he graduated, they wanted to give him a car. He said, "No, I'll take a black cow." And he took it. And I guess Leroy went on to great fame with the Dallas Cowboys, but his greatest fame was with the University of Alabama here, and he was indeed one of Coach Bryant's favorites. And another one, too, Herb, that I saw, his only Heisman Trophy winner, John David Crow, who expressed a thought that so many would like to say. When someone passes like this, you think of things, golly, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had said that. John David Crow, the Heisman Award winner, said, "I loved him, and I told him so."
The procession, we understand, will consist of 300 cars, and it is estimated to be a 5-mile procession. It will begin on 10th Street, pass by Bryant-Denny Stadium, where Coach Bryant, of course, had so many successful seasons. At one time, had won 57 games in a row at Bryant-Denny before that record was erased this past season when Southern Mississippi beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. From there, the procession will head past the Memorial Coliseum, down McFarland Boulevard to I-59, and, of course, I-59 into Birmingham, where they will pick up I-65 and exit on 6th Avenue South to Elmwood Cemetery in Birmingham, where Coach Bryant will lay to rest.
You know, Herb, the coaches who had the record before Coach Bryant, Amos Alonzo Stagg started out at the University of Chicago. He coached for 57 years to get those wins, and Pop Warner coached 47 or 48 years to get his wins. Coach Bryant was only 38 years at the helm.
The procession will be led by 2 retired state troopers on motorcade and 2 presently working troopers who I'm sure that if you've ever seen Paul Bear Bryant after a football game, you saw him surrounded by many state troopers. One of those, Captain Ben Gamble, Captain Bill Holland, Captain W.O. Nichols, who had about a 19-year relationship with Coach Bryant, and Captain Robert Miller. These are the troopers who traveled at Bear Bryant's side for so many years, and they will lead the procession as it heads to Birmingham. The dignitaries, family, and team will be escorted back to Tuscaloosa following the burial at Elmwood this afternoon. And at the request of the family, the procession, including the 1982 football team, will as the Bryant family put it, be just like going to another game. Most everyone has now left the church. The casket has been placed in the hearse, and the procession will be getting underway very shortly.
What you have right now in front of the church, Herb, is a gathering of former players and friends and fans, or acquaintances that he has known down through the years, and every one of them have focused on this one person in their midst who has meant so much to them down through the years and affected their lives so immensely.
6 chartered buses just adjacent to the First Methodist Church, and those buses brought in the former ball players who played under Coach Bryant. It took 6 buses. So that gives you some idea of how many of Coach Bryant's former players made the trip to Tuscaloosa to pay their final respects today.
When you think of Alabama, the coaches other than Bryant that you think of are Red Drew, Frank Thomas, for whom Coach Bryant played, and Wallace Wade, who took, I guess, Alabama out of the realm of Southern football and made it a national power when they went to the Rose Bowl. And on January the 1st, 1926, they beat Washington State 20-19. Some people in Alabama, and our own Fred Sington was among that elite group that went out there. Johnny McBrown, Papa Pooley Hubert, a great number of them.
Coach Bryant's coaching career has spanned some 38 years, coaching at Maryland, Kentucky, Texas, A&M, and then 25 of those 38 years here in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama.
You know, one time he turned down the head coaching job at the University of Arkansas when he was only 28 years old. And, of course, on December, when he was an assistant at Vanderbilt, December the 7th, 1941, he enlisted in the Navy, which is a typical act of the man. His first win was against, tiny Guilford College.
Guilford
when he
College.
Went to Maryland, something like 60 to 6. And the first year, and here again it is typical of the mark of this man, he had a disciplinary problem in Maryland the first year he was there. And he put a guy off the team. Well, the governor of Maryland reinstated him. And Coach Bryant says, I can't have this. I've got to run the football team. So he said goodbye and packed up and went to Kentucky.
Another gentleman that I'm sure most people will be familiar with, a very close friend, associate of Coach Bryant, is Woody Hayes, the very controversial coach for so many years at Ohio State. Coach Hayes was one of the first to arrive here this morning at the Methodist Church, and our Lynn Sampson talked with him.
I appreciate it. I'd just like to know your thoughts at this time, your feelings about Coach Bryant.
Well, as I mentioned right now, I feel a great loss as I did back on a date when I was in high school, March 31st, 1931. When the fellow came over the hill at the baseball diamond and said, hey, you guys, Knute Rockne's dead. Yeah, and I felt the same loss then because Knute Rockne was the great coach of the era, no question about it. And this man is the great coach of this era. And to lose him and lose his leadership is a great loss. And I think that's why everyone is here today. They feel such a great, great loss.
What sort of impression did he leave, perhaps, on you or other coaches?
Well, I think he left an enormous impression. In the first place, he was a winner. What this nation needs, because there are too many people who don't worry about winning. Well, Bill Bryant was a winner all the way through. Everything he did was to win, and win honorably, and he certainly did that. And he set a record for everybody. I don't think anybody would break his coaching record. But he was a very meticulous man in his coaching. Everything he did purpose. When you played him, you knew his ball club would play clean ball. because that kind of a man. His team was well disciplined, the way he would have them play. And when you play a man like that, you either like him or you dislike him or you respect him. Well, in his case, you respected him. And we only played once, and he gave me a pretty bad licking, but you ended up respecting him.
What sort of void do you think he leaves in the coaching rank?
As you see now, the procession has just begun. The buses, in the first bus, that is the 1982 football team, the last to play under the legendary Bear Bryant. Following the first bus, there will be many more buses, as you see. Those buses carrying former players at Maryland, Texas A&M, and Kentucky. The buses filing into the procession. Procession now will wind through Tuscaloosa, head down McFarland Boulevard, the main street here in Tuscaloosa, then to I-59, to Birmingham, to I-65, and then exit on 6th Avenue South in Birmingham, Elmwood Cemetery, where Coach Bryant will lay to rest. And they are expecting some 30,000. And Tom, I would have to say that perhaps the most touching moment as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure that the ball players, as they now begin this procession, which will go by Bryant Denny Stadium for the last time, and the procession route was set up to do just that, if I were a former player and associate of Coach Bryant, that would be a very tender moment.
There will be some full hearts, some choked up throats, and some teary eyes. You can bet on that. Herb, I want to say that the people here, the thousands of people who are milling around these churches, the quality of respect for Coach Bryant is not strained nor lessened by their presence here, nor indeed by our presence here. I think, conversely, it is strengthened, because the degree of respect for the man, this is not a morbid curiosity. This is something in loving memory that they can talk about the rest of their lives, that they at least got close to the man in his final moments, and he touched them in that way.
The crowd is beginning to disperse now as everyone is heading to their cars. I'm sure most of these people will be journeying to Birmingham for the burial. It's scheduled at 12:30. There'll be a short ceremony over the gravesite. And as I look down on the street, I see Coach Steve Sloan, former great quarterback, who waved at us here on the tower. And nobody loved Coach Bryant any more than Steve Sloan, and I know vice versa. He was one of Coach Bryant's special people. But the burial will take place at 12:30. So, Tom, I guess that from this standpoint, the procession is underway. The services have concluded here in Tuscaloosa.
Well, Herb, any final words that we can say about Coach Bryant would probably have been said before and redundant, but I still would like to say that I, myself, and my 25-year association with the man have never met a person whose personality so invaded everyone else's personality. And for that, I'm a better person.
I worked with Coach Bryant for 10 years in the media and on Saturdays after football games, during press conferences, and very fond memories of the man. He was always most generous, very gracious to grant interviews when at times he was very tired. He might interview anywhere from 10 to 12, do 10 to 12 interviews, and you may be the last one to get to Coach Bryant, but he was always gracious. A very tender man in many ways, and certainly will be sorely missed in sports annals and sports history in this state. And a very dear friend. And I know we all have the same feeling at this special moment. So with that,
he always said, Herb, whatever you do, do it with class. And his final moments here in Tuscaloosa have been treated with class. He left in a classy style.
With that, we will say thank you for joining us. Live coverage from Tuscaloosa. Channel 6 in Birmingham will continue its live coverage from the funeral site, the graveside services, at approximately 12:30 from Elmwood Cemetery. Thank you all, and very good morning.